So during the month of November, I am interviewing men about men's issues, issues that are unique to men, but as always is the case, issues that are unique to men impact everyone. I wanted to talk to some folks about these issues, and today I'm talking to Phil. Phil and I know each other from Klarna, our days at Klarna, and I thought that he would bring an interesting perspective on a couple of topics. So why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll dive in and talk.
Yeah, I'm terrible at introducing myself. I am, I guess, summarized an engineering lead. I'm currently working for a company called Keto Health in Lithuania, or currently not working for a company called Keto Health because I'm currently on parental leave.
Yes.
As a director of engineering, I am a Brit stuck in Berlin. And yeah, I think that's a good summary.
Awesome. I love it. Well, you kind of brought up the first thing I want to talk about. Like you are on your parental leave journey and becoming a
Yes,
new dad and kind of
yes.
working that out. I think, I'm talking to people at different stages in their being a dad journey, and
Hmm.
what that looks like in their partnerships, and in kind of how they show up. So, what are you finding challenging and interesting about this new phase that you find yourself in, as a dad?
Everything. I think it's kind of interesting because I think I said to a few people when we were like when me and my partner were going into this journey that I wondered whether we were too selfish for this part of our lives. And I didn't
Okay.
mean selfish, I meant independent. And as a relationship, we don't ever really rely on each other. We're a very independent couple, and
Mm,
like we don't. There are points and places where we need to rely on each other, but very rarely does that ever come up.
yeah.
And then switching to having this new person join the family who is just completely dependent on us, like completely dependent on us,
Right. Right.
was such an adjustment,
Yeah.
such an adjustment. And the adjustment of just it being constant and continuous. And me, you really have to, like, I think maybe going back to thinking, maybe I was right in my assessment that I was just too selfish to enter into this journey because I'm just like, what about the things that I like to do? What about the things me as a person, kind of like you have to really put that, especially at this phase of the thing, on a shelf and say, right, maybe I come back to that
Yeah.
later. But like
Yeah.
these things that I found that defined me as a person are like, right, no, that's on the shelf. I'm now a dad, and I'm like, I can see them, they're still there, they haven't gone, but it's like right now I am just like, I have to keep this small lump of meat alive until he can do it himself. So
Yeah.
that's been the real challenge. I think it's been really
Yeah.
interesting to go through.
No, I think that's so fascinating. I do think, I mean, listen, when I used to be a doula and I used to always tell people, they were like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready. And I'm like, it doesn't really matter because that little human requires you to be ready.
Yeah,
Like, does
yeah,
it really
it's
matter if you're
literally
ready or not? They're going to be like, I'm going to need you to move me from point A to point B because I can't walk.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And I'm going to need to feed me because I can't feed myself. And so
yeah,
being ready isn't a thing.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. It
So,
really.
I totally hear that. I mean, I haven't been a parent, right? But I've been the other adult in my sister's kids' lives and, helped raise them. But it does require just such a different perspective. I think it also is interesting what you said, like it changes the relationship between you and your partner,
Yeah,
right? It
yeah, yeah,
shifts things around
yeah,
because
yeah,
there's a
yeah.
different reliance, I would assume.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And we have had to rely on each other much more
Yeah.
than we have before. Um, and I think the most impactful thing in this whole experience is, I don't know, I'm gonna I'm gonna choke up if I say this probably, but I'll try and say it without
Yeah.
crying. It, like, I miss my partner.
Yeah.
Like we just don't have time together anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's really, and we're actually just kind of I'm just ending my parental leave now,
Okay.
and we're trying to work out what our time schedule works like, for taking him and picking him up from
Yeah.
kindergarten. And we worked out that how we're going to have to do it is one of us is going to have to shift their working day earlier, and the other one is going to
Oh,
have to shift their working day later. So it's like, great. So then
even
we
less.
little time that we did have together is gone now. Like we will
Yeah.
have no time in the week. We'll have no time,
Yeah.
and that's been a real struggle, a real adjustment to go through, to say like, okay, again, it's that kind of thing. It's like I said, I put the things that made me on the shelf. It's kind of like, right, we've kind of parts of our relationship are now put on the shelf as well, and that's been an interesting adjustment. It's an interesting adjustment. And they talk about one of the things that my partner's friends were telling her about is that they were saying how they had experiences where their male partner had become jealous of the baby. or they felt like they were jealous of the baby.
Yeah.
And I can, going through this experience, I've never felt that experience, that emotion towards my son,
Yeah.
but I can completely understand. And I suspect that probably these people that have been branded as that probably didn't either, but I can definitely see how that can kind of portray itself, and how you can kind of assume that that's the experience that someone is going through, because this person just kind of like takes a big chunk of your partner away from you for for 18 years probably.
Yeah, until you get your feet under you in some way, right?
Yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point, because I too have heard, so many of my friends say like, "Oh, our relationship is shifting because he's jealous of the baby, and I've got to do these things. I've got to breastfeed. I've got to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's really important. What you just said is really important, because like the average man isn't like looking at that baby and like, I resent you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, no, you love this person that you brought
Uh-huh.
into the world and that you want to parent and you're so proud of. You're not like, I'm mad at you for taking mommy away, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's not the emotion. But what you just described is so important.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not, it is still like you're missing that connection. The reason why you made this human is this
Mm-hmm.
connection. And that
Yes.
connection is
Yes.
like there, but a little frayed,
It's,
right?
yeah, I mean, I don't know whether, I mean, it is frayed in the sense that it's just a stressful time. Like
Yeah.
it's a difficult experience, and
Yeah.
that makes, like, any relationship going through a tough time is you're gonna snap, and you're gonna have those moments where it's
Yeah.
not perfect, and you say things you regret, etc. On both sides, that's always going to happen.
Yeah.
But I don't feel that the relationship is frayed
Right. Right.
particularly, but it is like
Yeah.
definitely it's harder.
Yeah.
It's been a difficult situation to
Yeah.
not do. It sounds terrible. Like
No,
it's been very
yeah,
enjoyable,
it's
but
okay.
it has been hard.
Okay. No, and I think it's I love that you're just talking about it, because I think we don't, it's like, oh, we'll just not talk about it and it'll go away. But the truth is, like, what I imagine in my head as you're talking is like, when something like, when, string gets wet and it sort of gets this pull, it's still string,
Hmm.
it's still attached, it's still there, and
Yeah,
when
yeah,
it dries, it's gonna shrink back up, right? And get closer again. But it just has this moment of like,
yeah.
oh, there's a little distance, right? And how, but I imagine that, having a child is obviously one of those big moments, but it could also happen if you become an executive, or if like, there are other things that could happen. You could,
Yes.
for something happens, you get a major illness. We'll talk about that in a minute. Like,
Hmm.
things can also happen that can cause that pull.
Yeah,
And as
yeah,
long as it
yeah.
doesn't snap, you are still. It's not like the relationship doesn't disappear. It's just that it
Hmm.
has some
Hmm.
tension,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting that you mentioned that, like, becoming an executive topic as well. Both me and my partner have reason, like my partner is a direct level, and I'm a direct level as well. So we have quite a pull of our work on our
Yeah,
lives normally, and that's always why our relationship has been kind of fairly independent of each other, because if one of them is a kind of dependent on the other one, it's
yeah,
going to struggle a little bit, and I
yeah,
think it would be fairly unhealthy. And that's been a real, like, I'm very interested to see how we balance the baby and two jobs when I go back. We
yeah,
haven't had to do that yet.
yeah,
So either she's been on parental leave or I've been on parental leave.
yeah.
And it's been difficult then. My partner went away on a business trip for a week, like a few weeks ago. And that was difficult. I have a dog, which makes the whole thing an extra level. And I was walking the baby and the dog at the same time. And it was a struggle. And I'm like, how it's going to work when we both go back to work is going to be
Yeah.
interesting. I work remotely for a company in Lithuania, which means I do have to travel there a little bit. So it's like, okay, let's see how this goes.
How are we working this out? Yeah.
This is going to be interesting. So we shall see.
Do you see any change? And I've never talked about this with anybody, so I'm curious. Like,
Mhm,
do you see any change now that you have this other relationship with this new
mhm,
little person, and the changing kind of relationship, or the extended relationship with your partner?
mhm.
Do you see any change in your leadership and how you relate to the people around you on your team? Any of that? Is there
Well, I
any
don't know,
change?
because I haven't worked
Oh,
really
yeah.
yet during this
Yes.
period of
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
I think it will be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see. I don't know
Yeah.
what I've on the flip way around, though. What I've really struggled with is not trying to apply my techniques from the workplace into this environment. And that's been probably the
Yeah.
hardest thing, is to like say, like, look, no, this is home life. This is not
Yeah.
like, I do I think it's okay. I still call our family a team,
Yeah.
like, and that's okay. I'm happy with that. But I've been
Yeah.
like, I think I need to say like, no, that's the limit. We don't have to have retros. We don't have to like, like there's a limit of like things. I've seen myself going,
Yeah.
right, how would I approach this at work? Like, and I'm like, no, like this has to be much more organic. Like it's fine that I can use the default skills, the instincts that I would normally use, but I'm not like, let's not write stuff down. Let's not like
We need a
I don't need
Kanban board,
emotion.
right? It's funny, my friend and I that have a podcast on product management, we're actually doing an episode for like Thanksgiving time in the US that's all about how product managers use product management at home. And it's
Mhm.
really funny, like the Kanban board for building the baby's room and putting my kid on a
Yeah,
pip. Like I put my teenager on a pip and I'm like, then what happens, right? Like
yeah.
you kick them out? Like, but
I
it's
think the thing that, and I think that's okay, but I think the thing that there's really in my mind is like the goals. When I'm at work, the goals that we're trying to achieve are completely different, and trying to
totally.
like just trying to raise this person to be whoever he needs to become, and I shouldn't be like in a workplace environment. There's an element of that, but in the reality of the situation is actually I try and get those people to be. It sounds a bit rough, but like what the company needs them to be,
Yeah,
right? There's a
you're moving
balance,
them
but
towards a thing. Yeah,
yeah, they have to go towards the thing that is valuable to the company.
yeah,
Whereas with Vivian, he like he should become what he wants to become, and I shouldn't be kind of like pushing him in any specific direction. And that's been, I think, already, and I think I'm already failing at this topic. But trying to allow him to become the person he needs to become and grow in the way that he wants to become is difficult because
yeah.
I've already enforced part of my music taste on him, and he's already playing with Lego, which is I was the one I was like excited, like right, when can he like what's the age he can start to have Lego? And I was like literally excited. I was like, wait, no, hold on, like I didn't stop me because the second that we felt that he could have Lego, he's got it, and now it's his toy. But I'm really like I have to
Yeah.
think about that and step back because it's really I need to give him the space, and that's been a learning already. But
Yeah.
I think I'm going to continuously fail at that, right? I think that's
Yeah, I
generally
mean, I
parents
think
too.
that's tough, right? And I think
Being aware of it is
we
good.
can all see the ways that our parents viewed us as an extension of themselves, and not
Yes.
even when they were good parents who could let us go and try things. It was still there's still a little bit of like, hey, don't forget who you represent, right? Like that, like there's that. But I think when I think about you as a leader, you've always struck me, and working with you, you were always a really heart-centered leader. And you
Hmm.
come from that place. And so I think there is some interesting like play ways that you can use the two, but I do think what you said is really factual. Like there's different goals, right? These are very
Yes.
different goals, and trying to make sure that you can parse those apart is really
Yeah.
interesting.
And we'll see how it works out when I go back. But I think and maybe it's been an artificial barrier that I've put in place, and maybe that will come down over time. But I've tried very hard to make sure these are two very different things, and these are
Yeah,
separated, and maybe they will start to merge as I kind
yeah,
of understand a little bit more what my role as a father is, and then we shall
yeah.
see.
It's
But
hard
I
to
don't
tell,
know.
right? Like
Yeah.
I always say, like, having gotten into product fairly early in my career, product management and doing what I did at work, I learned some things at work that I could then become a better human with. I was a better friend and a better, better girlfriend, a better sister, because I knew like I was trying things at work and going, well, that didn't land. I got to try something different. Right. And so I kind of I saw some ways like communication skills and things that I was like, I need
Yeah.
to, I can, but it's not true across the board, right? I'm not
Yeah,
like,
I think
I don't,
the main thing the skill that I've built up professionally that is really useful is just patience.
yes.
I think that's the core thing. Just being patient is really, really important as a parent, and that's been probably the main skill. Because I wasn't like I historically I haven't. I'm not naturally a patient person. Like I just that's a skill I've had to build.
Yeah.
So that's been very useful though.
Yeah. No, and I mean, so sometimes I'm pretty sure you've led some children at work, so
I,
giant
sometimes,
grown ones.
sometimes, sometimes
We
I
don't have to
think
name names, but I have some children, so I'm just
I I used to joke. I had it. I think I don't know. It might even still be there in one of my social media profiles. I had work dad in like in inverted commas in my social media profile because
yeah,
there are definitely people who I have led who will act like children, in the
Yeah.
workplace, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
going to happen, and that will always happen. And
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah. Or people who come to us to do a job who need a little reparenting because they've got some damage that they bring into the discussion. You're like, all right, let's bring it together and talk about it. So, and like I said, I view you as someone who's able to do that in a way that not everyone can, not every leader can. And I was always impressed with that. And it made my job easier that you could carry that load on your team.
I
So
appreciate
it worked really well. So I would also love to talk about, you had a really interesting thing happen about a
that.
year ago.
Interesting.
When
Interesting
I
is a word. Sorry.
interesting is a word that I'm using, but I remember like it was shocking to me when I heard it through the rumor mill, right? And
Mhm.
so and I was like, what? So I would love for you to share about this because I think this is a really important men's topic about
Yes.
health. And so tell us what happened, and we can discuss it.
So I nearly had a heart attack. And I don't really like the terminology that people use kind of varies. On
Mm,
some people's terminology, I may have had a heart attack or
okay.
a minor one. I had a blockage in my heart, and there wasn't enough blood getting to a specific part of my heart.
Yeah.
That meant I had to have an minor operation. They put a inflatable metal tube into the heart, and it inflates the valve.
Yeah.
But yes, I was very close to having a fairly catastrophic heart attack.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think it was about 3 years ago now.
Wow. Yeah. It was a while ago. When in
And,
the
and,
lead
and
up
just clarify, when I would have been 40 at the time, so very
okay.
young
Yeah.
for
Very
that
young. Yeah.
to happen. Yeah.
In the lead up to that, were there clues?
Yes, yes, there was. I
Okay.
mean, the process. I'm trying to avoid getting onto complaining about the German healthcare
Yeah,
system
yeah. I hear you.
because that's a whole other topic.
I mean,
But
if
the
you want, we can
process,
talk about the NHS, right?
like this, yeah. I think we should avoid that topic. Yeah, let's avoid it. You're gonna trigger me, and we'll be here for an hour. Um, uh, they like the whole process from when I started to get concerned about it to when I actually had the operation. It was, and the tricky thing is you can't see inside the heart, so you can't actually tell
Right.
what's happening until they do the operation because they
Okay.
use a
Yeah.
contrast dye to check the flow of the blood and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it was about 6 months from the start of the process to when I was seen, and it kind of it started with breathlessness,
Hmm.
and then some discomfort in my chest area, and it got slowly worse and worse and worse. And I was already in the process, already in the system,
Hmm.
to have this checked up when it got to a point where there was a point where I was like, oh, like this is bad,
Yeah.
but it would have been that was very close to the end of the thing. I think if I hadn't, like, I actually and it's just completely coincidental. I went to get in Germany. They have these like over a certain age checkup. So if you're over 40, you go and have a checkup and
Yeah.
da 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 da. And I went to do my over 40 checkup, which is completely unlike me. We could talk about because I would never go to the doctors if there wasn't anything terribly, terribly bad. And I wonder
Right.
whether in the back of my head this has already started to kind of happen. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, maybe something is going on that I need
Yeah.
to get checked up. And we did the initial check, and the doctor was like, yeah, I think we should probably do something a bit more serious in terms of checking. And
Okay.
he sent me to hospital like immediately at that point. What then happened was terrible because they sent me away and
Oh
refused this
wow.
and said there was no problem, etc., but whatever.
Right.
But yeah, so it's a long, long process. And I think if I hadn't kind of accidentally gone to the kind of, well, I don't think it was accidentally. I think it was subconsciously that
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
I'd gone to
Yeah.
the doctor. Um, uh, I probably wouldn't have noticed until I really was in a situation where I couldn't walk
Mm.
without feeling like just go walk down the street without feeling a tightening in my chest and a
Oh.
pain in my chest.
Yeah.
And that was the point where, and previously that would have probably been the point where I go, oh no, I probably should go and see a doctor right now. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
now's the time.
Now's the
But yeah,
time. So,
now's the
yeah,
time.
my legs aren't working anymore, so it's
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
right? Like I've
But
fallen down, right?
at
But
the same time, I was still I was in that kind of physical state, but still flying on business trips to Sweden, and going on like team outings and stuff. Because like, I'll be fine. It's nothing. It's not a problem.
yeah.
And that was a very stupid thing to be doing.
Yeah. No, you're the is there a doctor on the plane guy? Like this is
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you hope there is, right? Those are the moments. No, so when I was kind of thinking about topics for this series, one of the things that, because Movember is obviously a lot about men's health, and
Hmm. Hmm.
you know, and being really focused on that. I read some statistics that say that men have about 30% of the GP visits that women have.
Hmm. Yeah.
And while I can make some accommodation for pregnancy, right? And that we
Yeah.
see doctors more when but 30% is low.
Yeah. Until I went to the doctor for this checkup, I don't think I'd been to see a GP for 15 years at that point. And the 15 years before that was because I had appendicitis.
Right. So you had some sort of emergency situation.
Yeah.
I'm going to the doctor, but only for emergencies.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically.
But
Yeah.
but the thing
That's
is,
how I
that's
would
what
have
men
seen it.
do.
Yeah.
Like it's not you. That is what the statistics say. That men
Yeah.
go to doctors for emergencies.
Yeah.
And then they die 2 to 5 years younger than we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not our fault.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't like, I honestly, I don't know what it is. I've thought about this a lot previously, and actually I've thought about the way that I acted in a professional environment when I was going through this, and I was very much like, oh, I knew that it was not great. Like I was fairly certain, even though the doctors were still telling me, oh, it's probably, you're too young. The general thing they were always saying is, oh, you're too young. Like
Yeah.
this is not going to be a problem. You're too young. Um, uh, and the whole time I was working. I continued to work through this whole process because I was able to work. Like I would, like if I didn't move, if I wasn't moving around, it was fine. And my job doesn't require much physical exercise, right? So, and the whole time and then I was going for checkups and stuff, and I was like, oh, and I'm a very transparent and open person, and I was obviously saying like, oh, I'm just popping off to the cardiologist, and I was like, oh, what? Why are you going? And I was like, no, I was like, no, it's fine, it's nothing. It's like, and trying like really hard to allay people's fears and say like, oh no, it's not like, this is not a problem, it's all good, it's not a problem, don't worry about it, don't worry about me, it's all good, it's all fine. I obviously trying to convince myself at the time, and what I know now talking to a few people in retrospect, that was made the situation so much worse.
Yeah.
Because like I didn't believe that, and then they didn't believe it, so it was like, oh my god, Phil's gonna die now, like Phil's
Yeah,
gonna drop
it's
dead, like
all over. It's all, yeah, yeah. Like I said, when the rumor came to me, it was not good. Like I was
yeah,
like, okay, people keep me up to date. I want to know what's happening. Like when it found because I get all the rumors, right? And so when the
yeah,
rumor
yeah,
came to me, I was like, okay, well, what do we need to do? Like, do I need help? Is there something we need? No, he's on it. But I do think what you just said is really interesting. I think that we have built a structure, a cultural structure, and I mean, I'll just call it the patriarchy, but there's a cultural
mm-hmm,
structure that says that if men say, I'm going to the cardiologist and I'm worried, that is somehow not allowed.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Because you're not allowed to make us worry, not just women,
mm-hmm.
but the people that you are responsible for,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I don't know that women are also allowed to make people worry, but we just tend to say what the thing is.
mm-hmm,
Like, there's more permission for us to say, there's a thing. We're allowed the vulnerability of,
yeah,
there's a thing and I'm worried about it. And
yeah,
I, like, this is going to be a really trite statement to say, I want different for men,
yeah, yeah,
right? I want you to be able to say, I know that I can't change the structure, but I want you to be able to say,
yeah,
I'm going to the cardiologist and it's a little scary.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I
Right?
think I think going back historically, both my dad and my granddad have both had heart attacks. My granddad died from a heart attack, and died from a heart attack moving rubbish to the skip, taking his rubbish out. Like he
Yeah.
just dropped dead in
Oh,
the like during physical exercise at the age. He was old. It was like not particularly
sure,
surprising.
sure.
And my dad also did a similar thing, kind of had a fairly serious like bypass thing, but he carried on working. It was like the whole time it was like, oh, it's fine, like don't worry about it, like
Yeah.
it's all good, it's fine. So I guess there's been this kind of like pattern, and I'm like looking up to, I guess, role model and saying like, oh, that's what happens, you're just like, it's not a serious thing, you just
Yeah.
get through it, it's
Carry
fine, we'll
on.
like
Yeah.
carry on, might die, but it's fine, like most of the
Yeah.
time it's okay.
Yeah.
Right, and that's, yeah, and that's what it that's how I've been taught, and it's definitely how I will not be teaching Vivian in the future, that's for sure.
Right. No, I mean, my dad walked in. My dad passed away in 2017 or 2018, and he came in after working outside all day long. Told my mom, "I didn't, probably should. You should probably call an ambulance. Something's wrong." And he had cancer. He was riddled all through his body. He was gone like 13 days later. And what we don't know as a family, what my sisters and I have discussed, I'm sure my brothers will never talk about it, but what we've discussed is like, what did he know?
He like I don't want to make assumptions, but he must have known. Like
Yes.
he must have been
It
concerned. He
was,
must
I
have
mean, it was
known.
in his lungs, his bones, his brain. It was everywhere.
Hmm.
And so what happened that day that he was like, uh-oh,
Yeah.
right? And my guess is he was like, I don't want to drop dead and leave myself in the house with
Hmm.
my wife. So I need to go to the hospital now.
Yeah.
Right? And you just think, that is not okay.
No.
Like, I just want to say the really simple statement. That is not okay because we need you, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so the world needs you. You're here for a reason. And
Yeah.
but I find it, and I'm not saying women never do it, but I find it fascinating, right?
Yeah.
That it's like there is a structure we've put in place that says, stay in this box if you are a
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
and do not get what you need because
Yeah.
what you need
Yeah.
might make me feel bad.
Yeah. And the ridiculous thing of this situation was I the what is my condition, like it's a bit complicated, but basically I've got sticky blood and this
Okay.
was gonna happen anyway, whether I
Okay.
was a vegan or whatever. If I haven't been a vegan, I haven't eaten well, I haven't treated my
Sure.
body well for the past like 44 years. However, even if I did, it would have likely have happened
Yeah.
anyway. But
Yeah.
it would have been a progressive if I'd have been going to the doctor and talking about what was going on, and also talking about my family history and the
Yeah.
fact that there is pretty much no man in my family who has not had some kind of heart condition or some sort of heart problem.
Yeah.
um, I would have been getting checked up. We would have been doing the diagnostics, and
Right.
it probably would have been picked up a lot earlier, which would have meant that there are. And I'm now on preventative drugs that I could have been
Yeah.
taking that have no real side effects at all. I
Yeah.
cough a little bit from one of my drugs, but that's the
Okay.
only side effect
Yeah.
I have from these drugs.
Yeah.
And I could have been taking those for like 20 years, and
Yeah.
this would potentially never have ever happened at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's yeah, I was stupid.
You're not stupid. You're not stupid, but I think like
No, but it is stupid. Like it is stupid. Like it is ridiculous. Like it is actually stupid. There's no sensible, logical explanation
yeah,
about why you wouldn't go and get things checked out.
yeah,
And the only, from my experience, the only thing that I can really think is that I was always fearful of going to doctors, like, and being told I was like, go away, you're being stupid. Like, stop wasting your
yeah,
time. Also,
yes,
there is another thing as well potentially that comes into this. We talk about the NHS, like the difficulty with socialist healthcare is that you don't. There's a part of you that doesn't want to stress that system. So it's kind of like I don't like it because it's free and I don't have to pay for it. Like I don't want to, like, if I go to the appointment with something that isn't important, and someone else who does need to see a doctor
I
can
know.
like get an appointment, and that's always been part of it. But I'm in Germany now. That doesn't. There's
Yeah.
no excuse now.
No, I know. I totally understand. I totally understand. But it is like one of the things that I think is really interesting about what you just said. One of the themes I'm picking up on, so this is really interesting in these conversations, is there is such a, there's this old statement that men are afraid of being rejected and women are afraid of dying. We're afraid of being killed, right?
Uh-huh.
But one of the things I'm realizing is that neither side really takes the other side's fear seriously. And so when women are like, I'm afraid that I'll be killed if I go do this, men are sort of like, okay, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe, right?
yeah.
Why would that happen to you, right? That kind of thing. And when men say, I'm afraid that someone would say I was stupid, I'm afraid that I'll be
Mhm.
rejected, I'm afraid that I'll be, left out because I just shared my emotions, women are like, okay, you're not going to die from
Mhm.
rejection.
Yeah.
And so neither side is taking the other side's fear
Mhm.
seriously,
Yeah,
which then
yeah,
doesn't leave room for us to solve the problem.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But what you just said is, I mean, that fear of like, I don't want them to say I'm ridiculous for having this fear or this
yeah,
concern
yeah.
is so embedded in our
But I
culture.
would like if that happened, if I'd have gone to a doctor's and they said, "Oh, look, just you're being ridiculous. Please, like, go away. Stop wasting my time." That would play over and over in my head for the next
Yes,
decade. That
yes,
whole like every time I go to sleep, I'm like, "Oh, that time I went to the doctor's, like, and I was told I was an idiot." Like, it would
yeah,
just these things always play in your head, and
yeah.
it just goes back and back and back.
Yeah, and it makes us less willing to take the risk, right?
Mhm.
They're like, because then the next time you didn't feel well, you'd be like, well, last time he
Yeah,
said you're an
exactly. And I'm
idiot.
sure it's
Get out of
nothing.
here.
And also, most times I haven't gone, so it's
I'll
most
be
of the time
fine.
it's sorted itself out. It's fine. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it is like it is such a it is such an interesting thing to realize that there is. I mean, even among male friendships, right? Like when I say, well, "Do you talk to your male friends about that?" No.
No,
Why would I
how's
talk to
everything?
my
Oh, it's
male
fine.
friends
Great.
about that? Well, they'll stop inviting me because I'll be that guy, and I'm like, what? Right? So, but I am like I said, I want different for men. I want you to be able to say, I'm concerned and be heard,
Mhm.
right? Even if it's a whisper, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So as a closing question, when you think about role models, and it can be someone you know, someone you have met, someone you don't know, when you
Hmm.
think about male role models, who comes to your mind and what did they mean for you?
It's difficult because whenever this topic comes up, I always have this kind of most or a number of my previous leads. There's been a part of them that I'd
Yes.
be like, ah, that's amazing. Like, I'll take that.
Yeah.
So I have this kind of uh, like this unreal person that is kind of like an amalgamation of like these
Oh,
various
that's
people, and
powerful.
like not just necessarily leads, but also like other people I've met in my life and other
Yeah.
sort of people who have been in a part of my life. So I can't like it's very difficult to say. I
Yeah.
can't say like it's
Yeah.
this person that is like a bit of this person and a bit of this person and a bit of
Yeah.
this person, and they've all given me something. And also, what's always really interesting is that whenever I think about that person, there's also like a counter person because all of these people had some terrible trait that I'm like, right, also need to avoid doing all of these things that I have. So there's this
Yeah.
kind of weird,
I love that.
and maybe you need to give them a name at some point. Both of them a name. Might have to have
Yeah. Yeah. The
a
two
name with
versions. No, I
two
love that.
people in it. But
I love
yeah,
that.
but I have this. I've actually got it written down where I've got this list, and I'm not going to name them
No, it's
specifically.
okay.
The funny thing is, most of them would be horrified if I was specifically to say like, "Oh, these people are these have been role models, or parts of these people have been role models." They'd be like, "Oh, please don't say that."
Oh,
No.
yeah, don't say that. Right.
Yeah.
No, that's so interesting. Yeah, I always find it fascinating when I hear third party that some it's usually with the men I've led, right? I'll hear third party from someone else. Oh, he loves you. He admires you. He thinks this about you. And I'm all,
Oh, I would never
that
tell these
dude,
people.
that dude couldn't utter those words in my presence if
No,
his
I
life
would never. I've never
depended on
told
it.
any of these people. Actually, no,
It's so
actually,
true.
that's not true. I did actually. I have written a blog post where I named a lot of these people and said like
Nice.
these are the people that thing. But whether they read that or not, I don't
Yeah.
know.
You're like, I didn't send it to them, right?
No, of course not.
No, I love that. But I love what you just said. I do think that so much, I've been asked in the past, like, how did you craft your leadership skills? And I'm like, from great people who taught me some good things and from people who I was like, I'm never going to be like that.
Yeah, and
Right?
for me,
And it's like,
it's always been the same. For me, it's always the same people,
yes,
and
exactly.
and it's like always the same people that they
Yeah.
there's a traits in everybody that are, and I know for myself personally, like, there's things that I'm good at and there's things that I'm
Me
not
too.
good at, and I think it's always good to be open about that and be
Yeah.
forward about the things that you're not good at. But yeah, those. I'm trying to think if there's anything. Yeah, and I think the best example is I worked with someone. They'll probably know who they are if they listen to this, who is a perfectionist.
Yes.
And he taught me about quality and the delivery of quality, and that was something that's incredibly important to me.
Yeah.
But I know that I can never match what he expected from everyone, and I never want anybody to match that level because it was easily the most stressful working environment that I've ever worked in.
Yeah. So you get to learn like the good side and
Yeah,
also the like,
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
won't never be that.
yeah.
Totally. No, and I love that. I love because my thing is, and I think you are someone I can see this way. Like I always want people to I don't want them to change. I don't want them to try to model themselves after me or another leader. I want them to be them. We need people to be themselves and
Mm-hmm.
figure out how they fit that into what we're trying to do. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And figuring that piece out is sometimes tricky because you're trying to figure out like how do we make this puzzle come together, right? Which is why I love to build teams, right? I love that act of building teams is fun because you're like puzzle piece, puzzle piece, puzzle piece, but they're humans, right? So you want to figure out how they're going to figure this out together, and there's going to be great moments and terrible moments, and
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
I
I'd love to say that the what you said about me about like fitting myself into the role and working out what is useful that I can apply is intentional. But I think you've just potentially met me at a later stage in my life where everything's locked in now, and I know that things just I can't improve now. It's like
I got lucky.
yeah. I think previously I would have definitely tried to change and adjust, and I guess though elements of that would be growth. But like, yeah, I think I was too old by that point. I was like, right, I think I know the things that I'm bad at, and I'm going to try and avoid doing those.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. I'm like, oh, I won't be being a different person than that, right? Like, sorry, everyone, you're this way. Yeah, tell me something I don't know, right? I know I'm stubborn. I know I'm aggressive. I know I'm opinionated. I know all of those
It's
things.
always it's always funny because one of the things I now always do when I join a new organization is say, look, I've never been the best engineer, and everyone is always like, oh no, like you don't say that. Like I'm sure you got. I'm like, and then like it's always like 3 or 4 months in, they're like, oh no, you weren't lying,
Oh,
were you?
right.
Like, you really
Interesting.
don't know anything about engineering. It's like, no, I just know how to hopefully get engineers to do the things that they need to do. That's it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, thank you for coming and talking to me. This has
It's
been a
been a
lot
pleasure.
of fun. It's been fun to talk about it, and I appreciate your openness. I one of the when you said you would do it, I was like, good, because I knew you would have a real conversation with me. So, which I feel like that's something I can always trust with you. So, I appreciate you coming and talking to me.
It's been really enjoyable.
Yeah. So if you're watching this, you'll notice there's a little QR code down in the corner. If you would like to donate to Movember, it's an organization that really focuses on men's health, prostate, testicular, those kinds of health issues, but also mental and behavioral health issues that are coming up. The suicide rate among men is really, really high. And we want to also work on that. So if you would like to donate, you can donate this month while we do this series, and we'll make sure that they get that money. So, Phil, thanks for talking to me. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.